Hey, it's Marcel. I am geeked up about my new book that just got released worldwide. If you haven't heard, it's called Humane Leadership Lead with Radical Love, Be a Kick Ass Boss. Now, if you love the podcast, you're going to love the book. I spent several years researching the best skills and behaviors of people leaders that engage employees and drive results through a humane approach of empowering humanity, developing trust, and getting the best out of people. It's out now. Get it wherever books are sold. Humane Leadership. Lead with Radical Love, be a kick-ass boss. Check the link in the show notes and grab your copy. Welcome to the Love in Action podcast. I'm your host, executive coach, speaker, and author, Marcel Schwantes. I believe that when we show up with our full humanity to work and lead from a place of love, joy, purpose, care, and inclusion, it's going to make a radical difference in your leadership, your business, and your bottom line. This is a show about actionable, practical love, the verb, as a leadership and business strategy. Let's get rolling. Another amazing guest. So I'm going to set the table for you this way, okay? I think you would agree with me that the world has shifted in ways that we could not have possibly imagined even 5 years ago. Maybe I could say even 3 years ago, okay? And the truth is that the old leadership playbook doesn't work, okay? So we need to get over that, because today's leaders, if you really want to succeed and leave a legacy, are those who dare to lead from the heart. Sure, they're still using their head, right? They're using their knowledge, their expertise, their logic and intelligence, the head stuff. But today's leaders, the best of the best, get into their hearts, okay? They're authentic, they're self-aware, they're courageous, and they care a great deal about people, which is the whole reason why you listen to the show. Hello. All right. So our guest today is Kimberly Davis, and she knows this better than anyone. Okay. She is the author of Brave Leadership. If you are watching on YouTube, there it is. Okay. So the Brave Leadership is a book that challenges us to sort of step beyond fears and apprehensions and challenges us to build confidence that we can kind of count on in our day-to-day work, how we lead people, right? And how we influence people, right? So if you've ever wondered how to lead boldly, especially in a world moving at the lightning speed that we're at with AI, okay, this is not only the book for you, this is a conversation you're going to really enjoy. Kimberly Davis not only wrote the book, she is the founder of Brave Leadership, where she champions emerging leaders and senior managers navigating today's workplace. She shares her inspirational message of personal power, responsibility, and impact with organizations across the country. And she also teaches leadership programs worldwide. In fact, Kimberly is adjunct faculty for Southern Methodist University's Cox School of Business. She's also a TEDx speaker. And her book, Brave Leadership, was named among Inc. magazine's most impactful books. And by the way, I haven't mentioned this, so I'll drop it in right here. Brave Leadership has been revised and updated with new content. It was just re-released this summer, in June, in fact. And I'm thrilled that Kimberly is here to talk about it. You're going to love her. And here she is. She now joins us on the podcast. Kimberly, welcome.
It's so great to be here with you, Marcel, and all of you who are listening. I'm so excited to be here.
So are we. And hey, this is how we start the episode. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
What's your story?
Well, my story is very different than most people who do the kind of work that I do. I started off as an actor, and I was an actor for many, many, many years. And when I eventually transitioned out of the theater world and into the training and development world, I was kind of a hired gun for an engagement and leadership organization. And I was in the classroom day after day after day. And I was noticing that a lot of the things that we struggle with as actors on the stage were things that I was seeing the people in my classrooms struggling with, and yet nobody was talking about these things, and there didn't seem to be any way to deal with these things. So I would watch people, when their boss would come into the room while I was teaching, try to, overcompensate and prove themselves, or I'd watch them start to shrink back and make themselves smaller and try to hide out in the conversation. And all of these different things, when you're an actor on the stage and you're in the spotlight, everything is much bigger, right? So you're worried about what people are going to think about you, and you're worried about making a mistake and looking silly and looking foolish and people judging you and failing and all of those things. Well, it turns out that, people in business are thinking these exact same things, but nobody's really talking about it. So what I realized is that a lot of the tools that we were using in the theater to help us get out of our heads and stop worrying about what people are thinking, and having that be the thing that informed how we showed up in the world, right?
Oh.
So because what happens is, when you're worried about what are people going to think about me, and will I make a mistake, and will I look foolish, you start behaving in ways that aren't necessarily your best, most authentic and powerful self,
Mm.
right? We start protecting ourselves, we start to prove ourselves, all of these different things. Well, in the theater, we've got tools to deal with that. And so what I did is, so I guess it was back in 2008, way back in 2008, I was in the classroom for a large pharmaceutical company that was a subsidiary of Johnson and Johnson, and the head of training sat in on my class, and he heard about my strange theater background, and he walked up to me, actually the next morning, after Googling me, and this was early internet, and I had my old coaching website up and things, and he had read about me, and he walked in and he said, "Hey, I've always wanted to do a leadership program that use theater tools." And I said, "Well, I've been noodling something over for years, but haven't had an excuse to develop it." And so I got permission from the organization I was working with at the time to work directly with the client, because they didn't want to touch this weird leadership theater thing with a 10-foot pole, with one of their top clients. And so I worked out a deal with him that I would developed this full day experiential program for his high potential sales team. And in exchange for a screaming deal, I would retain the IP, all the ownership for the content. And so he got a great deal. And before we rolled it out in Philadelphia, I thought, well, gosh, I need to make sure this isn't awful. So that it works, because I didn't know. I mean, it was so counter to all of the corporate
Yeah.
programs, leadership programs, engagement programs I had been a part of in the past. And it was very experiential. So I ran an open enrollment session of what I was calling onstage leadership.
Uh-huh.
And it was incredibly successful. And I ran that in Dallas, and then we ran it in Philadelphia for the high potential sales team. And that was the beginning of, at the time, it was called Onstage Leadership. Now Onstage Leadership is still a program that I run, but it has become so much bigger than that, Marcel, because what I realized, when people are willing to be who they are, powerfully, constructively, responsibly, in every situation they face, and take ownership of the impact that they have, that takes a tremendous amount of courage. And that's where I started transitioning to calling my work in general brave leadership, because it requires us to be brave. What it requires us to show up powerfully in the situations where we feel off our game, and it requires a lot of bravery. So
Yeah.
that was it.
Yeah, well, and we'll be unpacking all kinds of things about your book and brave leadership. So, just so I'm making the link between where you started in with your acting drama background,
Yep.
and then that company, which company was it that you said approached you about doing the?
It was a big pharma company that was a subsidiary of Johnson and Johnson. So that was back in 2008. I think they changed their name like 3 times since then. but that's the way of the world, right?
So are you saying that it was because of that kind of launched you into this
That's
new
absolutely
world
right.
of
So
leadership development?
I was teaching an engagement workshop for them through a different company. And that's when the head of training approached me after sitting in on my work, and he's like, I really like your work. I want to do a program on theater. I don't know what that looks like. And so that's when I developed
Yeah.
on-stage leadership, which eventually became Brave Leadership. I
Right.
still do on-stage leadership as well, but
Okay.
um, that's a really small, intimate 12-person program. So as I started to do more work, I had to add add some other programs because making a difference 12 people at a time is a tough it's a tough road to hoe.
Yeah. Okay, so then take us back. Can we flash
Mm.
back to when you wrote the book? Because a lot of people may have the copy of your first edition right now,
Yeah,
and which happened around 2017, 18 timeframe, right?
yeah, yeah.
So what was the journey from that pharma company that invited you to that, and you're like, "Oh, hey, I'm onto something here.
To
This
doing the book.
I can
Yeah.
make this happen, at scale." To writing the book, and what was the journey to that point?
Yeah, so I had been doing that back in 2008. That launched Onstage Leadership, and so I was doing regular open enrollment programs almost monthly the first couple of years, and then as I started doing more private programs for clients, I backed my open enrollment down to once a quarter, and was doing a lot more with directly with clients. Um, and what I kept hearing over and over again is this is this is amazing, and I don't really know how can I get my hands on learning more about this? Um, and and the truth is I've learned from just like you, we've learned from so many of the greats that are out there. But unless somebody had studied, I was a theater major. So unless
Yeah,
somebody had done a deep dive into the world of theater, a lot of the tools that I was using and a lot of the ways that I was using them in a business environment, ha- to my knowledge, had not ever been talked about in the same way before. And if you just to, give you some context, this was before, so I'm talking about authenticity and presence and influence and vulnerability and purpose and all of these things. That was before Brene Brown's TED Talk came out. That was before Start With Why, Simon Sinek's work came out. That was before Dan Pink's Drive
right.
came out.
Mhm.
So I was really a strange unicorn. I mean, people looked at me like I had three horns on the head, my head half the time. And what was wonderful is as all those big bodies of work started coming out, people started going, "Oh, okay, I see some value in this." But before that, it took some time because people didn't get it. People didn't get, well, why do I want to be vulnerable in the workplace? Well, why does purpose matter? So that was a tougher time to have this conversation because people weren't having it. Now, thank goodness,
Yeah,
thanks to your work and the work of, we've got a lot of friends who work in this space.
yeah,
I think the culmination of all of us, working consistently to have this message, I think
yeah,
it's really started to create a groundswell. I
yeah.
would like to say that it's changed the world. I think we still have work to do,
Well,
but it's been exciting.
I agree with you. The groundswell is happening and it's expanding. More and more people are jumping on the bandwagon of creating more of everything you talk about in the book. So let's dive in here, okay? Because
Okay.
and by the way, you probably get this question asked a lot. But I'm wondering if the answer might be different from 2018 timeframe to this year. So here we are, 2025.
Yeah.
It's post COVID,
Yeah.
and now we're entering the AI revolution.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
so here's a question you've heard probably a million times. What does brave leadership mean to you today?
Well, in many ways, it means the same thing, but I think our obstacles are bigger, right?
Mm,
So for me, the way I define bravery is different than what we traditionally look at bravery as. Traditionally, look at bravery as being willing to face and endure pain and danger, right? Well, I don't know about you, but I don't really get excited about. Yeah, I can't wait to face and endure pain and danger, right? And I know, what's true in terms of the way our brains work is we get what we focus on. So if you focus on the pain and danger, so when you think I want to be brave, right? And what you're doing is I want to be brave because I know that there's pain and danger. So when you focus on the pain and danger, you're going to experience the pain and danger viscerally, right? Your body's going to react. Your amygdala is going to start kicking in those cortisol hormones, and you're going to start to viscerally react to what you're experiencing as pain and danger. Pain and danger isn't always running into a burning building. It's not always a physical thing. Pain and danger might be rejection. It might be judgment. It might be loss of identity. It could be a lot. It'll be a lot of different things. Humiliation, overwhelm. All of these things are part of the pain and danger parcel, right? So if you're focusing on pain and danger, you get pain and danger. What I knew is that if I wanted to show up as more powerfully in my life, I couldn't focus on the things that scared me, because that would start to make me play small. That would start to make me, it would stop me in my tracks.
Yeah.
And so for myself, I redefined what it means to be brave. And I redefined it as being your best, most authentic, confident, and powerful and authentic self. And if you could, I knew if I could do that, if I could be my best, most authentic, my most confident, my most powerful self, that I could face the pain and danger. Right. But I'm focusing on addressing it in a different way. And so that would allow me to do the hard things. It would allow me to be and bring my better self, but I wouldn't get stopped by my focus of attention. And essentially, most of my work really has been about how are you focusing your attention? Because where your attention goes, your actions follow, right? Your focus triggers your feelings, which triggers your behavior. And so if we can shift our focus, then we can shift our outcomes.
I need you to repeat that is one of those, like, mic drop moment kind of, quotes. Tell me again what we focus on, run through
So
that
our
cycle again.
focus,
Yeah.
yeah, our focus triggers our feelings,
Yes.
which then triggers our behaviors, right? So if you're focused on, I'm scared. So what happens is that you feel all sorts of feelings that trigger your amygdala to cause your body to do things, which cause you to shut down, which cause you to play small, which cause you to try to prove yourself. It's our focus triggers our feelings, which triggers our behaviors. So if we can shift our focus, we can shift our outcomes.
Oof. Okay. Yeah, because if you don't shift our focus, it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that if you're fearful of something, the end of the road is you're going to end up fearing that whatever that thing is.
Exactly.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
You live into it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Boy, this is a big component of your book. So I want you to unpack something that you call, and I quote, super objective. Okay. What is that?
So your super objective is essentially a marriage of your values and your strength, and then set into actionable language. So it's essentially your deepest purpose, but we put it in actionable language so it forces you in action with yourself. And it's not, a lot of times when we think of purpose, it gets this big hairy scary furball where we're like, "Oh, what's my life purpose?" And it instead of putting us on an active path, it kind of shuts us down, going, I need to figure it out. I need to figure it out. Well, what a super objective does, it just allows you to show up purposefully in every situation you face, because it's anchored in action. So you cannot achieve your super objective just by thinking it in your head. It forces you to get in the game.
Yeah. Okay. Before we dive any deeper into this conversation, this is totally related. Okay. I want to make sure our listeners know about this special launch that you got going on. Break that down.
Oh, it's so exciting. So I have been wanting to do this, Marcel, for more than 17 years.
What?
So this is like one of those bucket list dreams that I've had forever. And I wanted to democratize the super objective, because what I have seen is I've seen it change lives. I've seen it's changed my life. I've seen it make a difference. And so I thought, for so long, most of my work has unfolded doing, very big executive education programs for people that had been handpicked by their leaders and their HR managers to attend this high potential or emerging leader program. But what I know to be true is most people don't have access to those big programs. And so I wanted to make the super objective, accessible to everyone. If you've got an internet connection, that you can do that. But of course, up until recently, the technology just wasn't there without spending a gazillion dollars. And I didn't have a gazillion dollars. So I just kept waiting and waiting and trying to figure out how I could do that. And, in the last couple of years, so much has changed in the world of technology. And I happen to be married to an engineer who is very tech savvy, unlike his wife. And so we've partnered on building out an online super objective tool.
Yeah.
And this is so exciting, Marcel, because now, and it's going to be completely free. We want people to be able to identify their super objective. I mean, this is where I kind of geek out on this kind of thing, and I know you do too. So this will be fun. But so I'm kind of a change the world kind of girl, but yet I do it on one person at a time. That's how I roll. Is I want to connect you to the best of who you are, which is my super objective, to connect you to the best of who you are, and then the ripple effect of that will change other people, and the ripple effect of that will change the world. So la 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 la. Anyway, so my belief is that if we want to see a better world, it's going to unfold one person, one situation, one impact at a time. And so if people are keyed into their super objective and they can take constructive, purposeful action to make a positive impact in every situation you face, which is what a super objective allows you to do, then the ripple effect of that is that we all benefit. A rising tide lifts all ships. So that's the way we change the world. One person, one situation, one impact at a time.
I love it. Well, I don't want to wait for them to get to the end of the episode. How do they get this tool? Like,
So it's very exciting. So it's the one of the reasons we did a re-release of Brave Leadership is we put the tool as a QR code in the book. So it used to be a manual process, a brief manual, like a shorter process of the deep manual process I do in the classroom. But now the QR code will take you right to the super objective tool, which is exciting. But you can all go to the super objective tool with or without the book by simply going to nowbebrave.com. And it will walk you right through the tool. Now, there's a little caveat I want to put out there, Marcel, because there are so many tools. There's What's Your Spirit Animal tool and all of these tools out there that are making the rounds on social. This is not that. Okay. So this is more of a robust tool. I mean, it's got a lot. It's statistically sound. So it's going to take about 20 to 40 minutes. Most people take about 25 minutes to complete it. But don't go in thinking that it's going to be a 5-minute, one and done. This is going to put you in the path to be able to uncover your deepest purpose. And so that takes a little bit more effort than just naming your spirit animal.
nowbebrave.com.
Nowbebrave.com.
Or get Kimberly's book and find a QR code. All right. Awesome.
Thank you.
So glad you mentioned that. And yeah, so we're all got to be better for it. That's the thing is you and I and all the people that that I know, and we our little tribe. That's really why we do this, Kimberly. I mean, you nailed it. You said you wanted to change the world one person at a time.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that this podcast will do the same. Your book will do the same because
Marcel, one of the things that that has changed for me since 2018, and is I used to think that all of us doing our hard work in our own little corners of the world was going to really make a difference. And I do think it makes a difference. But what I'm realizing is that if we really want to create change, we need to elevate the leadership conversation together. That like we are not in competition with one another. It is your work. I need your work and my work and Heather Younger's work and all the different amazing people in the world, all of their work, Tanvir Nassir's work. I think about all the incredible people that are doing powerful work out there in the world. And big change doesn't happen because one person decided it should be so. Big change happens because we band together and say, "Hey, we're going to stand together and elevate this conversation to a new place." And it reminds me because I had this kind of big aha moment earlier this year when I was thinking about this and realizing that, I think back, I don't know how I'm a child of the 80s, so I
Me too.
kind of outed myself. I just got out. But I remember back in the 80s, I think it was in 85 or 86 when there was a big concert called Band-Aid that came out.
Yeah.
And what was happening is there was a really devastating famine going on in Ethiopia. And there wasn't a lot of attention that was being paid to what was happening over there. And so what happened is all of these musicians all over the world got together. So there was, Bono and Madonna and
Bruce
Phil
Springsteen. Yeah.
Collins
Hmm.
and yeah, I mean, like all the big names of the time.
Yeah.
And they put together a big concert called Band-Aid, and it wasn't highlighting any one of them. It was saying, hey, let's pay attention to what needs to change,
Yeah.
right? And so they got together, they did this big concert, and it elevated the conversation. So now the world was paying attention. And yes, they raised money to help people, but I think even bigger than that, it elevated attention. And to me, I think this is an opportunity in this moment in time that we all have together.
Yeah.
Is that how can we work together to say, hey, you know, we need to pay attention to what's happening in the world and how can we play a bigger game? And that can only happen if we're playing side by side.
100%. Thanks for that. Okay, I want to dive back into some leadership concepts in your book. Okay, so let's take a very overused, by my estimation, overused buzzword. I'm guilty of overusing it too
Yeah.
much. Maybe you are too, and that word is authenticity.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
already
Oh
mentioned it.
my gosh, yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So
And I'm so glad you're going there because I think it's really easy, particularly in a leadership and influence perspective,
mhm.
to misunderstand what authenticity is all about. I mean, a lot of people are like, yeah, well, my boss is authentic. He's an absolutely authentic jerk. Right? And that is not what this is all about because authenticity in the framework of leadership and influence lies in the eye of the beholder. And so let me back up a little bit. My favorite definition of authenticity, I actually borrow from Bill George, who is a huge name in this space. If for those of you that aren't familiar with Bill George's work, Bill George used to be the CEO for Medtronic. He's written a book called Authentic Leadership. He's co-written a book called True North with one of his students. And so we'll let Bill be the authentic leadership guru. But the way he defines authenticity, I think, is so incredibly powerful in that he defines it as, are you genuine? Are you worthy of trust? Are you reliable? And are you believable?
Hmm.
And I think it's really beautiful definition, but it is so much more complicated than it sounds because who gets to decide? Who gets to decide? Are you genuine? Who gets to decide if you're worthy of trust, if you're someone people can rely on? Who gets to decide that? And the truth is, whether you like it or not, it's not you. I mean, you can decide it all day long if you want to, but that's not going to help you lead or influence. It's the people that you want to lead and influence that get to decide, do I experience this person as genuine? Do I experience this person is worthy of my trust? And that doesn't mean that we become like this chameleon shapeshifter person, but what that means is it requires a sincere commitment to actually caring
Mm.
about the needs of other people. What do they need from me? And to focus on addressing those needs without judgment, because once we let judgment get in there, once judgment sneaks in the door, people know, and you can't have the influence you need to have.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, another buzz term,
Okay.
especially since you mentioned Brene Brown, since her viral TED Talk.
Yeah.
That word is vulnerability. Okay,
Yeah.
and so much of that rubs off the wrong way on a lot of leaders.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what ways does vulnerability well, first, what do you think in your own terms is vulnerability? And then how does it play a role in brave leadership?
Well, I mean, most simply, I think vulnerability is letting people see you're human,
Yeah.
see you be human, let your humanity out, because that's a pretty vulnerable thing to do, particularly in the workplace,
Mhm.
right? And so I think vulnerability is both our biggest obstacle and our greatest opportunity for impact. And it because it depends on how you deal with your own vulnerability. I think, it's interesting because I think some of the biggest things that stop us, and this comes from whether or not you're presenting. So from a presentation skills perspective, this is true from a leadership perspective, from an influence perspective. Our biggest barrier to connection is not being able to navigate our own vulnerability.
Hmm.
And when you think about that from, like, let's say, just from a presentation skills perspective, um, when we feel vulnerable, that's when we do all these strange things like evade eye contact and wrap our arms around ourselves and put our hands in our pockets and have to hold on to our notes, for dear life in case somebody might get us, and we pace the floor because that's our adrenaline going through our feet, because we feel vulnerable. And so, if you can navigate your own vulnerability, then all of those things don't show up. You're free to show up powerfully and authentically.
Mhm.
Same is true, from a leadership and influence perspective. So it's the vulnerability that stops us. So when we don't show our humanity, people have a hard time connecting to us. They don't want to follow us. They it becomes a paycheck exchange instead of a connection and a relationship. And people will crawl over a broken glass for someone they believe in and knows that they care about them. But if you're just giving your here's my title and showing up with your title, then you're just going to get a paycheck exchange, and you cannot deliver on the results we need to be able to deliver in today's world in that way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I'm totally in agreement. Vulnerability does empower. It does help you to connect with other people, build trust. I'm wondering, Kimberly, if there's a flip side to the coin where vulnerability undermines your leadership and becomes more of a hindrance.
Well, so if we go back to that definition of authenticity, and I think it is one of the most powerful filters for action,
Hmm.
right? So I kind of have a rule of thumb when it comes to vulnerability that, if what you're about to share is better shared with your therapist instead
Right.
of a close colleague, it's probably not the right thing to be sharing in a setting. That said, so often most of us show up way more protected and guarded than we need to. So if if we look at vulnerability as a way to connect in an authentic way from what do people need from me to experience as genuine, worthy of trust, reliance, and belief, right? So we use that filter for action to determine how we flex that vulnerability. That that forces you to pay attention to, well, so for me right now, well, what does Marcel need from me to experience me as someone who is genuine and worthy of your trust and someone you can rely on and believe in? Well, how do I prepare for that, right? How do I show up in the face of that? What do you that are listening to us, what do you need from me right now to experience me as genuine, worthy of trust, reliance, and belief? It may or may not be the same thing as it is for Marcel. And for me to make an assumption that it is sets me on the wrong path.
Yeah.
So it really forces you to pay attention to the needs of everyone that's involved in the situation. Now, if I'm speaking to an audience of 1,500 people, can I pay attention to the needs of every single person in that room? Probably not. But what I can do, Marcel, and I think we overlook that, is I can have an honest to goodness, 100% connected moment in time with one person at a time. This person in the audience, and then that person in the audience, and that person in the audience, and this person in the audience, and that person in the audience. Be 100% present and connected to what is important to that human being in this moment in time. And that will allow me to show up as powerfully and authentically as I can.
Beautifully stated, and I would say it's always a skill that we need to develop. Like, nobody is born with or without vulnerability. I mean, maybe you're just naturally, that's your tendency is to be more emotionally honest and be able to connect with others because perhaps you have the edge already because of your personality type. But for anybody that's listening as us, I can't do that. I am not wired that way. No, 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 no. Stop
Yeah.
this false belief system that you are not wired that way. Anybody can learn the skill of becoming more vulnerable to be more effective as a leader.
It absolutely blows me away, Marcel, that when you give people permission to be human and you get out of their way, what will show up.
Mhm.
And I think for most of us, we don't give ourselves permission to be seen. And so, some of that's because there's not enough psychological safety in the
Mhm.
workplace. Some of that is because our heads in other places. So, particularly for those of us that are are more logical and introverted, that is a natural thing that you're in your head more often. And that is not a bad thing. And I don't want to ever have anyone feel like that's a bad thing. But what happens is if you can't connect to the hearts of other people and you can't show a little bit more in terms of what's going on with you feeling wise, people will make meaning of what they think is going on with you. And 9 times out of 10, it's not in your favor. So if you don't show emotion, what's going to happen is they're going to think, well, you don't care, or that you're mad, or that you're bored, or that you don't like them, or because that's what human beings do. Our brains make meaning of what we see. So we have to be aware of making sure that we're letting people know what we truly care about, what's most important to us, so they don't make meaning that is going to go against our ability to connect, lead, and influence them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the subtitle of your book, it goes like this: Unleash your most confident, powerful, and authentic self to get the results you need. Now, the word results weighs pretty heavy
Yeah.
because that's what leadership, I mean, at the end of the road,
Yeah.
if you're running a business, hey, you need to generate results, right?
Yeah.
Can't get away from that. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's tie in um the things that we are talking about related to brave leadership,
Yeah.
whether it's authenticity, connecting with others,
Yeah.
and being more vulnerable, et cetera, okay?
Yeah.
What's that one thing that a brave leader has to absolutely focus on to get the results that they want?
Yeah, I think it's impact. I think paying attention to impact. I think our numbers are a byproduct of our impact, Marcel.
Mm,
And the problem is most of us aren't clear about the impact that we want to have. That's what a super objective is. Is it's getting really clear on what's the impact that you want to have outside yourself. Um, because what happens is if we're not paying attention to impact, then we can't deliver the results that we need to deliver. Um, and once we are clear about the impact, once you have clarity about something, once you can name it, you can do something about it, right?
yeah.
So if you don't know what the impact that you want to have is, it's hard for you to be able to achieve that impact. And maybe you were lucky enough to achieve it once, but it's hard to be able to achieve it consistently. And if you miss the impact that you want to have, it's almost impossible for you to course correct and strategize about why didn't I have the impact I want to have. In order to be able to course correct, in order to be able to get consistent results, you have to be able to name it so you can do something about it.
Yeah. Good, good, good. Okay, I want to get into this is one of those questions. It's a hold up the mirror question. It might be a hard hitting question for people because we may have blind spots that keep us from becoming brave leaders. So, what would you say would be a really obvious blind spot? And if we already mentioned it, that's okay. Let's repeat it again.
an obvious blind spot that keeps us from being brave leaders,
Hmm.
focusing on ourselves and focusing on all of the focusing on the spreadsheets instead of the impact. Because if you focus on the impact, the byproduct will be what you see on your spreadsheet. But when you're focused on the numbers, what happens, Marcel, is it can really take us off our game in terms of take us out of alignment with our values. It can take us, we get very reactive. We're in survival mode. So all of those constructive, authentic, powerful behaviors that can get us the best results, those are tossed to the back end, and we're just in fight or flight survival mode,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Your book is full of stories, your own stories, stories about other people, clients, famous people, etc. I mean, share a story. Start with you, maybe. Maybe about your own leadership journey. Maybe a time when you had to act brave despite fear or uncertainty.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, so um interest I think my life has been a continual teach or teach thyself kind of situation. And for me, I think one of the biggest things that kind of rocked my world was when I did my TED Talk, because I had been given 4 weeks notice before I was told that I was going to be able to take the TED stage. And here I am. I teach this stuff, um, and uh, and yet I'm human, and so my humanity really got the best of me. And I remember going into this, the day before I gave my talk, I was an absolute wreck. I mean, I had these. I was starting to focus on all the things that could go wrong. I was all my focus was on the pain and danger. I was, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make a complete fool out of myself, and it's going to go viral, and there goes my business, and you know how we we start to go and go down that road. And I realized that if I wanted to get myself back on track with myself, and I think that's one of the most important things that we can realize, is it's not just how do we get ourselves back on track with the other people involved, but moreover, it's back on track with ourselves, because I believe confidence comes from knowing that you can count on yourself.
Hmm.
So if you have the tools to get yourself back on track with yourself and you work your tools, what it does is it ratchets up your own self-belief and your own self-confidence. If you don't work the tools and you experience yourself spinning out in these, like your amygdala is sending you into fight or flight, and then what's going to happen is you're going to erode your own self-belief, which was
Mm.
what was happening in front of my very eyes.
Wow.
So what I did was I got very specific about uh, who I wanted to have an impact on in this in that TED Talk. And I had the foresight. I don't know really how I did that, but I had the foresight to realize that I was going to be up against my own stuff in this, because, I mean, how we do life is how we do life. And I'd been up against my stuff before. So I had brought with me pictures of all of my amazing participants who had, well, some of the amazing participants who had put themselves on the line, and I watched them absolutely flourish because they were able to get out of their own way and step into their brave and make an impact.
Mm.
And so what I did, this is kind of embarrassing. What I did is I went into my hotel room and I put their pictures all the way around my hotel room, and I gave my talk specifically to those people in the room.
Mm.
And I I spoke to Gary, you know, who has made a tremendous difference in my life, and I've watched him just flourish. And I mean, I like all one person at a time, and I got myself centered back into myself through connection, one person at a time. And so when I showed up on site, I would love to say I wasn't nervous. Sure, I was nervous. But what I did is I paid attention to, what does this woman here in the tweed blazer need from me to experience me as genuine, worthy of trust, reliance, and belief
Mm.
when I'm speaking from that space, from that stage. And what does the person in the second row need from me right now in this moment in time? And what does, that guy in the back row need from me in this moment in time? And truly, I stayed centered and focused on impact one person at a time. And that's what got me through the talk. And I would love to say, it was perfect, but I don't think there is such a thing as perfect. But what it did was it helped me center in what mattered most at the time. And I think that's all we can do is when we're up against our own stuff, and that might be, having to have a really tough conversation that we don't want to have. Maybe it's a coaching conversation, maybe you've got to give bad news to someone, or it could be a presentation, or it could be a podcast, or it could be an email you have to send, or whatever it happens to be. When we're up against our own emotions, we need to get really clear on what's the impact that we want to have and focus our attention on what we can do, what action can we take in that moment to have the impact, because that will help us get out of our heads, circumvent our amygdala and that cortisol, and show up as our best, most
Mm.
authentic, impactful self.
Wow. All right. Let's pull back to maybe a broader perspective beyond the sort of the individual level. All right.
Yeah,
Speak to the founder of a startup or the CEO of a company with 1,000 employees.
yeah,
So they're now realizing that culture is important. So now
yeah,
they understand that they need to shape a culture
yeah,
that brings out more courage
yeah,
and bravery in people.
yeah.
So speak to the high level decision maker there that's creating the conditions, right?
Right.
What's a good starting point?
Well, you have to give people a reason to care, right? From an emotional standpoint, just trying to return shareholder value is not going to give them enough reason to care. What are you up to? What is the work that you're doing in the world? And every single business has a reason why they're in business, who they serve, why that matters, the difference that they want to make. So if you can if every person in your organization can anchor into why they care from a personal perspective, and that's the thing is that we get wrong a lot of times, is we think, we've got our vision, mission, values, and that everybody has to care about it the same way. But we're not automatrons. We're all very, very different people. So why you care is going to be very different than why I care. But saying this is what we're up to, a purpose bigger than the numbers, right? This is what we're up to. And then giving everybody in your organization permission to say, well, why do you care? What's the impact you want to have in the story that is, this is the difference we're making?
Mm.
Because once they can name that, then collectively you're moving in a direction towards really making a difference. But people get that sense of autonomy that they get to care because in the way that they care, why they care, and they get to experience themselves getting better and better and better, which is mastery, and they're living their purpose. And so if you look at those three things, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, oh my, that sounds a little bit like Dan Pink's definition of what it takes to motivate people in this new world of work.
Yeah. All right. As we wind down here, Kimberly, and before we transition to the speed round, I want to make sure, is there something that we have not covered that our listeners absolutely must know?
Well, yeah, we've covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time here,
Mhm.
Marcel. You asked great questions.
Thank you.
So I think we're good. I think we're good. Let's bring it on.
Okay, seatbelts on. Here we go. Um, a good book you'd recommend.
I recently read Jacinda Ardern's book, A Different Kind of Power. And in fact, it was listening to her audiobook when I broke my ankle because I was so into her audiobook. But it is fantastic. And I think she does a great job of modeling what I would consider to be brave leadership, what you would consider to be love-based, caring-based, heart-based leadership. I mean, it's just a fantastic book. For those of you who don't know who Jacinda Ardern is, she was the Prime Minister of New Zealand during the COVID years. And
Mhm.
so, and she also had a newborn at the same time. So she was going through an awful lot at that moment in time. And And I think it was interesting to learn from a female perspective of leading from that level of leadership during that time in the world. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was fantastic.
She's an amazing leader. Okay,
She
if
really
you
is.
weren't coaching and teaching and training leaders, what would you be doing for a living?
That's so interesting because I mean, I was an actor, so I would have. You would think that I would say I would be in the theater, but probably not. I would if I were. If I mean, I can't imagine not coaching and teaching now, but I really love the social psychology, understanding people. I probably dig further into that world, and I also love design. But I don't think I'd ever want to do because we, my husband and I, have done 5 remodels down to the studs, and I love design work. But I don't think I'd ever want to do it for money because for me, that is a heart thing just for me. So probably I'd be into some kind of psychology, social psychology, something like that.
Interesting, interesting. Okay, if you were, what do you do to kind of wind down, decompress after a hard day's work?
So I would have told you something totally different before I broke my ankle because it used to be going for walks, and walking was a very, very big part of my life. I usually walked between 5 and 10 miles a day, so that was kind of my how do I center myself? When do I listen to podcasts? How do all of that? So that's definitely changed, and I would love to say, oh yes, I have now my new centering ritual. I'm still searching for that new centering ritual. And I think that's been a big lesson for me is that, one thing is not enough. But I think just quick and dirty, every night, I always go through what I'm grateful for the day because it helps me remember how much I have to be grateful for in my life. So,
Favorite superhero movie?
favorite superhero? Oh, well, Wonder Woman, of course.
The first one especially. I don't know about
The first
the
one, yeah.
sequel.
I wanted when I was in elementary school, I wanted to be Wonder Woman. I mean, I had the whole golden bracelet thing going and the invisible lasso, and I would, use the because I grew up in Montana, so it would all the mud puddles would freeze over, and I would use like the ice from the mud puddles as the looking glass that I was going to see through the future. So Wonder Woman for sure.
And I'm sad to say this, but you and I are old enough to actually remember maybe the TV series with
Oh, yeah.
Linda
Oh,
Carter. Yeah.
that's what it was from. It was
Oh,
from
right. Okay.
it was from the TV
Yeah.
series. Yeah, Linda Carter. I was like,
Yeah.
what?
Former Miss America, I want to say, or
Was
yeah,
she? Probably.
I think she was. Yeah. Okay. Name a person, dead or alive, that you would like to have dinner with.
Oh, well, is Oprah too cliche? Because yeah, I'm still waiting for my dinner invitation, and she has got an open invitation anytime she wants to come to dinner. But I think she is absolutely a remarkable human being. So I know that that's cliche, but yeah, I kind of think she's amazing.
If anybody listening has hookups with Oprah, reach out to either Timberlake or myself.
Appease me, Marcel.
All right. Your last speed round question is your biggest hope for the rest of 2025.
My biggest hope for the rest of 2025 is that so I've got this goal that 1 million people will uncover their super objective. My suspicion is we won't do that by the end of 2025, given where we're already September. But I would love to see us reach at least 5,000 people to uncover their super objective by the end of the year. I mean, the ripple effect of that, a ripple effect, imagine 5,000 people taking consistent, constructive, purposeful action to have a positive impact. The ripple effect of that could change a lot.
Hmm. You may now unfasten your seatbelt. All right, Kimberly. Well, we bring it home as we do with every guest with 2 questions. Here we go. Okay, the first one is the love question, sticking with themes we've talked about. How do I lead with more actionable, practical love day in and day out?
Yeah, I think really investing in caring, deeply caring what people need from you to experience you as genuine, worthy of trust, reliance, and belief, that forces love in action. It forces empathy in action. I really think what happens when you invest yourself and commit to caring um, about what they need from you, then it what it does is it allows them to feel seen, and it allows you to connect to them on a much deeper level. And to me, I think that's the seeds of love. I mean, I remember Marcel, just day before yesterday, I was in the classroom teaching, and everybody was doing this partner work at the very end of the session. And I was sitting there, I was sitting on the table because I can't stand because my ankle's broken. So I'm sitting on the table and I'm watching this sea of 40 people talk about what they care about and the impact that they want to have. And I'm watching how when they're talking to each other about the impact that they want to have, how they are lit up. And when they're listening to somebody talking about the impact they want to have, how much sincere care they had for one another. And I got very emotional because I thought this is what love in action looks like, is people invested in one another and present for one another. And I thought, yeah, more of this, please.
You get to close us out. What's that one thing you'd want people to take away?
What's the impact you want to have? Because if you can name it, you can do something about it. So get clear.
Love it. Hey, let's send a bunch of people to the place that they need to go to find you, connect with you, learn more about you.
Awesome. Well, so you can find me in a lot of different places. I hang out on LinkedIn. That's exclusively where I hang out in terms of social right now. And my website is brave-leadership.com. And you can go and uncover your super objective at nowbebrave.com.
It's been real. We're going to have to do it again. Thanks.
This was awesome, Marcel. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm
Gang,
so grateful.
yeah, absolutely. And gang, you can keep the conversation going on social media with hashtag Love in Action Podcast, and look for my show notes, plus all of Kimberly's contact info. All of that stuff will be there, including a link to this YouTube episode as well. And all of that you can find on my website, marcelschwantes.com. For Kimberly Davis and yours truly, remember, in the end, love wins. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Love in Action podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it, subscribe, and leave us a review. Until next time, don't forget, the future of leadership is love in action. Believe it, practice it, and watch your leadership and business flourish.